28 minutes to 8 with Brian on the Pacific Breakfast Show, and a very warm welcome to Monday morning, the 30th of October. Well, I'm joined in the studio this morning now by Andrew Lovell, Managing Director and founder of Home Ownership Pathway for week 3 of our Home Ownership Pathway Bootcamp. In week 1, we covered personal finances, organising them to work for you to achieve home ownership. Week 2, we looked at deposit for first home buyers, and this morning we look at credit and how it affects your mortgage lending, as well as some tips. Joining us this morning also is John Bolton, founder and head of Squirrel Mortgages. In the last year alone, they've written close to $1 billion of loans and are Auckland's most awarded mortgage brokers. On that note, a very warm welcome to the show this morning, gentlemen. How are we doing? Well?
Fantastic. Yeah, good, thanks.
Very good. John, I have to ask the question because you are the head squirrel. Where does the name, how do you get the name Squirrel for a mortgage brokering company?
I don't know. I think you're just very tired and you're lying around in the morning thinking, what the hell are we going to call this company? And Squirrel just seems so appropriate, you know.
Okay, then. Well, there you go. And 8 years later, ongoing success. So that's great. Yeah. So this morning, gentlemen, we're talking about credit. Now, what is credit?
Andrew. Yep.
Andrew or John? Well, it's going to be an open discussion.
Yeah, it's basically it's an interesting component when it comes to lending. It's basically, it shows what your history is like in regards to paying your bills on time, and that's basically in a nutshell. It will show a potential lender what your payment histories are like in regards to paying your bills on time, and also over time you can build up what's called a credit file or credit score. And everyone starts off with, once you get a credit file, with at least 800 to 1,000 points, and then over time they use this thing called an algorithm. And the algorithm, every time someone checks your credit file, or even going for a job and they check your credit file, this can affect your credit score. So what we're aiming for is people to have a credit score between 500 to 800 points by the time they go to get lending. And anywhere under that, then obviously you're going to need to, there'll be some questions asked about how you got these certain credit files or how you got to that score under 500 or under 400. So yeah, that's what credit is in a nutshell, really.
John, in terms of credit and how important it is when applying for a mortgage to purchase a home?
Oh, look, it's critical. And it's so easy to stuff up. You know, we see it all the time. So most people, it'll be a bill or a couple of bills that they haven't paid. Maybe they've moved house and they just forgot about it, or just didn't get around to it, and that sort of stuff makes it really hard to borrow money. You really do need to have a clean credit history. And look, it just takes a bit of planning and a bit of budgeting. The good thing with your credit history is that it only survives on your file for 5 years. So even if you have got a little bit of bad credit, you just got to have 5 years of good behavior to get rid of it. And in most people's lifetime, 5 years is a long time. So if you stuff a few things up in your early 20s, you still got plenty of time to get it right. But it's everything. It's everything from your phone bill all the way through to how you borrow money.
Does that also include in terms of, when we're looking at banks or different tier lenders, whether it be a bank or 1, 2, 3, whatever tier lender, that sort of stuff as well, your statements? Andrew?
Yeah, definitely. What they try to look for is at least 6 months credit or good account management or character that you build up over that time. And so when you get to the application stage, if you've been shopping around quite a bit, obviously that's going to affect your credit score. And they can see that, they can pick up. So every time you apply for a loan, it affects your credit score, because the person that's applying for that loan for you makes a note of it and it goes on your file. It's kind of it's a strange one, because the algorithm actually works backwards, and that every time you apply for a loan or some kind of credit or loan lender, it goes against your credit score. So that's why I'm saying, like, even when you apply for a job sometimes, and they can check your credit file, that actually goes against your credit score. So it's kind of weird in that way. It's an algorithm that they use. But in what they're trying to do is just capture what your activity is like. So if they see if you've been applying for quite a few loans, and obviously you're in a bit of a situation. If you've got a really good credit score, a good history, a good account management record, then obviously you're not going to get that high score or low score put against your name.
And John, in terms of, like, okay, we're talking about having a good credit, and then they say that prevention is the best cure. So in terms of not even getting to that bad credit stage, which could impact, of course, negatively in, looking to purchase or to buy a home, what are the steps you need to put in place to make sure that your credit is between that 500 and 800 point range?
Yeah, look, just good behaviour. So if you have got yourself a little bit out of control and you've got a few maybe consumer finance debts, and that's pretty common. You go to the Harvey Norman and you get the TV on credit, and then you buy this on credit and that on credit, and before you know it, you've got quite a bit of debt there that needs to be repaid. The starting point is probably to consolidate all of that debt into a simple debt consolidation loan, so that you've got one repayment coming out after your pay goes in each fortnight or each month, just so you can get down to control and you can get some regular payments against that. Biggest thing that we find from a squirrel perspective is that most people these days have savings. KiwiSaver's really helped people with building up a deposit. The single biggest problem that we see is the amount of consumer finance debt, lots and lots of it. And, the first thing you've got to do is get that under control. Debt consolidation loan's going to help do that. And that's also going to help you just, make sure you don't miss any payments and stuff, which of course goes against your credit file as well.
Andrew, I'd like your perspective in terms of emotion, or both of you in terms of emotion, because when we're talking about credit and knee-jerk spending, and I can't speak for you two, but man, I'll see something in the shop and I go, I got to have it. It's the latest, only to discover that in a few months' time it's outdated or something like that. Can I get your opinion, or, both of you, please, to talk about this whole emotional thing when we're talking about credit?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just goes back to our determination and our needs and our wants, and that kind of mindset towards achieving home ownership. So if the pull towards home ownership is great enough, we're going to be able to go back to week one and look at our personal spending, and then really define what our needs and our wants are. So, going to the Harvey Normans or seeing all these things, I mean, we're just basically walking around like suckers out there really in this kind of society, because everything we can, once you start working, you're basically just subjected to this mass marketing of getting credit. Everything's on credit or on tick. So we really want to go back to our determination to get home ownership and get into determining what's a need and a want, and really defining that, and just staying away from like putting the TV on tick, or going to get that new car when we don't need one, and just really going back to, hey, this is a need. The need is going to get me to my goal, which is home ownership. So that's part of the emotional journey that we need to go on, and change a mindset towards achieving home ownership.
Yourself, John? Yeah,
look, the same. I think as well. I mean, obviously, just spend less than you earn. It sounds easy, but the other thing from my perspective is just the cost of credit. When you're borrowing money, consumer finance lending is often at really high interest rates. And the amount you're paying in interest, it's almost like a death spiral, Yeah, that sounds a bit sort of morbid, but the more debt you get, the harder and harder it is to repay, and it's scary sometimes just how much you're paying in interest, which adds no value to anyone.
It's funny because, from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, but apparently the word mortgage actually derives from a Latin term which means death grip. So
that's exactly right.
That in itself just tells you, like, okay, then let's get into a death grip to own a home, 30 years worth of death grip or that. But I hear this term from time to time talking about good debt. Is there such a thing as good debt, and why? Because from my own understanding, it's like, how can there be such a thing as good debt when all debt causes is a lot of grief and sorrow sometimes? John, your thoughts?
Oh, there's not a lot of good debt. I mean, I guess you could sort of say, I'm buying a house and having a loan that you can manage. You could argue as perhaps good debt, because otherwise you're paying rent. So better to pay yourself than pay someone else.
Yeah. Andrew?
Yeah, exactly the same. Home ownership, it's an asset that over time has proven to increase. So obviously you're paying debt against an asset that's going to increase over time, which obviously creates that real wealth for you and your future generations if you're going to on-sell that asset to your children. So yeah, home ownership is probably a real good example of good debt. In our scenario with the families that we're working with, obviously debt consolidation is another good debt because we're taking all your debts, consolidating it. I'm going to work with you over time to bring that right down. So that's probably seen as good debt because we're consolidating it, bring it down, and we're on a program to get rid of it altogether.
Okay. So, gentlemen, our final thoughts, or you leave us with, your most, important recommendations around this thing, credit, when we're looking at, purchasing a house. Start with you, please, John.
Yeah, cool. Look, I think it's all about just setting some goals and realizing that there's no quick fix. It's not a 5-minute easy win here. You've got it's a 4 or 5 year journey often to get everything right. And there's so many parts to it that you've got to get right, but it's completely achievable.
Awesome. And for you, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, if you've got bad credit, obviously still don't give up hope of achieving home ownership. We can work around that, and banks want to see good account management or good character over time. So that's going to be vital to achieving home ownership. Secondly, if you've just come out of study or you're getting into the workforce, try not to go out there and just get everything on credit. Obviously, it's going to affect you later on in life. So, the person that starts off flatting 5 years later might want to become an adult and start thinking about home ownership, forget about the bill that they forgot when they were a student, and that could come back and bite them. But a bank manager with a good explanation might see that and say, well, okay, we understand that situation at that time. We're willing to give you a loan of X amount of hundreds of thousands. But you can also check your own credit score as well. So go to Vita Advantage, check your own credit file, and make sure that you understand what the numbers mean. So you're between that 500 to 800 point range. You can go to Vita Advantage. We'll put up the link and check your own credit file. If someone else checks it for you, then obviously you're going to pay for that, $30 or $40 a pop. But check your own credit file, understand what your numbers mean, and just pay your bills on time.
Awesome. and I love that last comment how you said about students if they want to become adults. Well, on that note, it's a very big thank you, Andrew Lovell from Home Ownership Pathway, as well as John Bolton, founder and head of Squirrel Mortgages. Thank you so much for your time this morning, gentlemen, and have a great day. Thank you.
Cheers.
It is 15 minutes to 8. Radio 531 PI, bringing Pacific people together.